Hello, hello. To the audio check done real quick. I have Larry Pahl backstage, someone I've been corresponding with for 7, 8 years. As I told you guys, he likes to travel, goes to Egypt a lot. He knows Zawi Hawass, a lot of other people. Director of the American Institute of Pyramid Research. Larry Pahl's a very interesting guy. Audio's great, excellent, awesome. So he's going to be giving us presentations, showing us discoveries, some out of the box things. He is an author. I have one of his books in the studio with me right now. Larry's an interesting guy. He's following the footsteps of Adam Rutherford. You guys know I've talked about Rutherford before, and David Davidson and H. Aldersmith and all the great pyramidologists, the pioneers, going back to Taylor and Menzies. And Larry Pahl pretty much has taken up that mantle. That's what he does. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my old friend, Larry. How you doing, man?
Jason, it's nice to be here, man. There is, you talk about me a little bit, I'll talk about you. People watching, you already know this, but, some of my people may tune into you for the first time here when they find out about this. There is no one like Jason Breshears. Jason has written a lot about the life of Enoch. Enoch was a real person. He's written a little bit about in the Bible, but Jason has found in many other places in ancient writings that the Enoch has talked about. And Enoch was a very singular person that affected the human race in a profound way. And Jason Breshears is a mini version of that, in the sense that Enoch had revelations and knowledge that other people didn't have, and he shared them. Jason is voluminous. He's encyclopedic. He's an archive for information that just simply isn't available anywhere. Now, Jason, you used to boast, and boast is, in the best sense, that you didn't, do research from the internet, that you got your stuff from ancient writings. Is that still pretty much your tagline?
Well, I mean, old books is my source material. It's I don't really have, there's not much value on the internet. What can you find on the internet? I mean, you can find you can download PDFs of old text, and the internet is fantastic for reviewing other people's research. But other than that, I don't really have much value for the internet. Yeah. I tried the AI, and I even did 2 videos for my community, Larry, showing my community, do not use AI as a source. Do not use it to research. It will give you false data. It will cite bibliographies that do not exist. It even sent me to the JSTOR website, where I have a subscription where I can look up peer-reviewed papers. Those authors did not exist. Those papers did not exist. It literally made up the bibliographic citations. So there's a lot of good stuff on the internet when you research other people's research, but you can't use the internet as a
Do you think the Anunnaki have gotten into the AI? Because, the AI lies, like you're saying. I mean, the thing is, I find you can be discriminating, use it, but I've had it flat out, just exactly what you're saying, just flat out lie and make things up. So you do have to be careful, yeah.
Yeah, it has to be real careful.
Okay, let me ask you, I was just looking over some of your stuff about Nibiru and the Phoenix. How did you discover those? You alone seem to be privy to this. And here's one of the things too. I likened you to Enoch. Now, one thing I've learned from the ancient prophecies are that there would be 2 things coming out of basically the pillars of Enoch, this wisdom from the past. One would be the science of the ancient world, the speed of light, the fine structure constant, all the things we thought are modern things. There would be this repository of knowledge from the past. But there would also be, and this is what most people are weak on, there would be prophecies and warnings of things to come. And you have had for a long time, you've been talking about, the Nibiru and Phoenix as, planetary flybys, basically, they're going to wreak havoc for planet Earth. So how did you discover those? How did you find out about that? How did you get a hold of something that nobody else except you talks about and knows about?
Well, I mean, a lot of other people know it too, because I have a lot of fact checkers. A lot of people in my community will not accept things at face value. They're gonna order the same materials. They're gonna look at it. I got other communities too. I have my Cipher community, which is based off date sequence predictive analytics.
Oh, when I say you, Jason, I mean you and all the people that follow you. That's what I mean.
So
except it's them.
well, first of all, the Great Pyramid of Giza was the keystone to my research, because just as you said, you find references to it in the Hermetic, in the pseudepigraphical text, in the apocryphal text, and it makes you wonder, why do they remove these books from the Bible when it's these books that are telling us these fascinating things like Second Esdras? So, in discovering the Phoenix phenomenon, I'm a numbers guy, so if I'm reading different texts and I keep seeing the number 138 come out in Egyptian papyri for a 1,656 flood month, and it doesn't make sense to me, but it does make sense to me in the context that 1,656 months is precisely 138 years, because I've seen the reference to 138 years in other places. Then there's other texts that talk about a 276-year period. Then there's biblical chronologist Dr. Stephen Jones, who wrote The Secrets of Time, who talks about the cursed earth period he discovered, which is 138 times 3. Then we have references to an ancient Phoenix cycle that was 550 to 552 years. Well, that's 138 times 4. Then we have major historical disasters that are 690 years apart. Well, that's 138. That's divisible by 138 as well. So different chronographers claimed that different major disasters happened on years like 2208 of the old world's calendar. So why would you not say 2200? Why wouldn't you say 2210? You said 2208 of the old world's calendar. The Ogygian deluge destroyed the world. So you look up 2208 and you find, damn, it's divisible by 138. Then you read the book of Genesis and you add up Adam, Seth, Enos, Mahalalel, and you go all the way through Jared, Enoch, and I forgot all the names of them, Methuselah, Noah, Lamech. When you go through all 10 patriarchs and you add up how old their firstborn sons were when they were born, and then how long their sons lived, it's 1,656 years, which is divisible by 138. So once I realized the historical record was packed with references to this, like Nostradamus knew that there was a 1,242 year period that was absolutely important to the pre-flood world, and it involved the flood. Well, that's divisible by 138 as well. Then we have astrophysicists like Dr. Barry Wormkessel, who is absolutely convinced that there are two cycles that have everything to do with the history of our world. One of them was 552 years, and the other one was 3,312 years. Both of them are divisible by 138. So I find all these references, but it wasn't until I started looking at the rectilinear dimensions, the measurements in the pyramid for Taylor and Menzies, and they didn't make sense because they had an idea. They had an idea that the boss on the granite leaf was the standard by which everything in the Great Pyramid was measured. And because I saw Petrie's material, I agree with them, but their calendars and their dates were off. Then you had engineer David Davidson come forward with a much more correct calendar. He deviated from the erroneous calendar of Archbishop James Usher, and he showed a lot of timelines in the Great Pyramid that were right, but he was still wrong in other things. Dr. Stephen Jones was wrong for applying the wrong calendar as well. So many people who had the pyramid inch idea were right in their concept, but they were wrong in their applications. And then I wrote Chronicon, which took me 15 years, which is a history of the world using every chronological source I could find. And the 138-year patterning just jumped off the page. And then Petrie's measurements of the Great Pyramid, which are the most scientific, accepted by Egyptologists and scientists. These rectilinear measurements are phenomenal, and I'll only go by Petrie's measurements. And those measurements show that the rectilinear dimensions in the Great Pyramid are mostly divisible by 138. So this all lines up with me with there's a grand scheme here, because you already know, you've showed it in your published book. The Great Pyramid has every known physics constant within its dimensions. It has everything. It's not just curvature. It has entropy. It has the arithmetic It has the arithmetic for diminishing returns. It has the arithmetic for pi, phi, in multiple species of arithmetic in different dimensions. Like Mandelbrot said, the Great Pyramid shows the days of the year of the old calendar, lunisolar 360, and the modern one of 365.25. Even the 0.25 is absolutely perfect in the Great Pyramid. So it is a container of knowledge.
Let me tell you one too that you might not know about, to add to all the ones you just mentioned. So I discovered an alpha and omega in the Great Pyramid. Robert Grant, you know about him. He discovered an alpha and omega on the rim of the sarcophagus. It's amazing. All the millions of people have been in that rim, never saw it before, but it's there. But I discovered an alpha and omega in a hidden part of the Great Pyramid. You can only get there with private permission. And even people with private permission don't usually go to the spot where I found this, because it's in the entrance passage. Most people, when they get private permission, they go down the descending passage to the subterranean chamber, because that's open to you if you get private permission. It's closed to the public. So they go down to the subterranean chamber. They go into the Queen's chamber, which is closed to the public, but with private access, you can get there. But very few people go up toward the original entrance. And you know the scored line? Are you familiar with the scored line that's in the entrance passage of the Great Pyramid?
Yeah. Charles Piazzi Smith was fascinated with that line.
Yeah. The old people talked about it a lot. Most people don't know it. Well, right next to the scored line, I discovered this alpha and omega. And I call it an alpha and omega because it's got sort of an alpha and omega in it, but it's more complex than that. It's got some Templar signs and some other things. Anyways, it's right next to the scored lines. Okay, now Eckhart Smith has a great book on the Great Pyramid that's free online, which is a fantastic book. And one of the chapters he has is on the scored line. And so he shows through very complex math, but he shows that the entrance passage and the scored line are showing basically they're solving the three body problem. If you're familiar with physics, the three body problem has never been solved, but there are some specific solutions to it. And a case might be, okay, you're Elon Musk, you want to put a satellite out, you want to put the satellite into a spot where it's going to require the least amount of instrumentation from the Earth, because the gravity of where you're sending it is going to hold it in its space by a sweet spot. That's a specific example of the three body problem. And so you got the gravity of the moon, the gravity of the Earth out there, and you want to put your satellite into that sweet spot. Now, those are found through what are called Lagrange points. The way the solution is, it's Lagrange points. And when you see the way it's pictured, it's like a pyramid and an inverted pyramid together, like the shape of a full jewel of some kind.
Larry, that's what the optical illusion looked like. When Giza had the pool of water around it, the retaining area was full of water. Travelers used, like Biruni 1,000 years ago describes, when you get closer and closer to the Great Pyramid looks like it's merging with an upside down pyramid because of the optical illusion created by the condensation of the heat coming off the desert and the fact that it was surrounded by water.
And the appearance was like a jewel. So
yeah.
So anyways, this alpha and omega, which looks exactly like those Lagrange points, and it's right next to what Eckhart Smith says the scored line teaches about the three body problem. So that's just another one besides all the ones you mentioned that is associated with one of the things I found. Maybe if I show a few slides later, I'll show you a picture of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let me ask, just to finish my thoughts on asking you about the Phoenix and how do you pronounce it? Nibiru.
Well, I don't call it that. That's Zechariah Sitchin calls it that. I did in my early years, but
Dark Star.
I call it Nemesis X now, because Nibiru has these negative attachments that the ancient aliens community have attached to it that I don't subscribe to.
Okay, so let me ask you this, if I'm right. So Nemesis X you associate with 2046, right? And Phoenix is 2039, is that right?
Absolutely, 2030. Well, the Phoenix year is May to May, so it's 2039 to 2040. Nemesis always appears in the month of November every time.
Okay, so let me ask you this: what do you think will happen, and should I be making preparation right now for what you're going to tell me? So the first question is, what do you think is going to happen in terms of just a prophetic description of what's going to happen on the Earth when these flybys take place?
You know what? That's very direct. It's very direct, Larry. And I'm gonna give you a very direct answer. It's not going to be comfortable to a lot of people, but before 2039, I suspect around 2034, 2035, we're going to be bombarded with news items from all over the world of increased volcanic activity, even where volcanoes were not even known to exist. And this is going to build until 2039 when all the pressure is released in the Phoenix phenomenon. So Phoenix always causes massive amounts of volcanism. I have shown my community from multiple different vantage points exactly where the phenomenon is going to be concentrated this time. It's never worldwide. It was worldwide 4 times, but they're very rare. This one's not a worldwide event. It's 3rd magnitude, not 4th magnitude. And we show the magnitudes, how it unfolds with mathematical precision. So what we're going to deal with in 2039 is we're going to be shocked to find how in the West, the survival rate is extremely high. And yeah, a lot of communities close to the coast are going to be affected. I don't see a high death toll at all in the West, but we're going to be shocked about the death toll in Southeast Asia, all across Asia, all across China, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Indonesia, that area of the world. And I've shown on my channel why the calendrics show that this is the target area for the Phoenix this time. Now, the rest of the world's going to continue just fine. And there's probably going to be a lot of immigration out of the East into the West. However, 6.5 years later, that's a true cataclysm that affects the entire world. These are back to back, and they're very well documented in the eschatology of different cultures. The 2046 event is going to touch everybody. And if we go strictly by the Sibylline Oracle, Greek prophecy, Book of Revelation, Cerinthus material, we have back-to-back cataclysms, the second one by far the worst. But even after back-to-back cataclysms, according to the biblical record, in the 7 seals, only a quarter of the world is affected. And I'm telling my community, it's Southeast Asia. Now, in the next one, the Wormwood cataclysm, which is a summation of the 7 trumpets, which is Nemesis X, it's the whole world, but still, it's 1/3. 1/3 is the fatality ratio of those who survived the first one 6.5 years earlier. So what we're dealing with is let's just say it's a population of 10 billion people in 2039. We're just going to use the number 10 billion because using a 10 is just easier to divide. So we're dealing with a phenomenon in 2039, month of May, stretching to May 2040, that will remove 25% of the world's population, meaning 75% survive. 6.5 years later, 1/3 of that 75% are now removed, leaving 50%. So 50% of the world's population is still a massive amount of people surviving. It all depends, and you surviving has everything to do. This is what I tell my community a lot, has everything to do with how you are moored to source. Your personal, not collective religious belief, that doesn't mean shit. Your personal mooring to source, your personal relationship with the oversoul is what will dictate what will happen to you through this period of time.
And coupled with, you've mentioned the most important part first, the connection to source, but now connection to practical resources. So in other words, should I be a prepper? I should make sure I'm right with source, but then now, do I, like Noah, do I start building an ark?
No. This isn't a 2239 BC Typhon flood, flood of Noah scenario. That was very unique situation. Hell, it's such a unique situation, it divided history between the pre-flood world and the post-flood world.
But what I meant, Jason, I meant analogous to this time. No, I won't build an ark, but I will build. Is there something I should be building? Is there something I should be building for knowing the first thing is be right with source. But now that you are, should I also have some canned food? Should I also farm?
I'm going to tell you now, the better part of wisdom, what I'm doing, the better part of wisdom is to always have, 30 to 60 days worth of food and supplies. That's what I do now. I do that now. But I also feel, and I tell my community they had, this comes up in chats a lot, Q&As, but I tell my community too, there comes a point, just like I say that too much learning is an admission that there's too much, the acquisition of too much information creates an overload. If you start accumulating all these things to survive a negative, you're literally preparing for a negative. And in preparing for that negative, you put yourself on the frequency of the very thing that you're trying to avoid. So there's a balance, and that balance can only be struck by wisdom. I can't be the one to tell somebody when to stop. Only the oversoul is going to be able to tell each individual, and it's always going to be in proportion to where they are in the world, how close to the proximity to areas that are going to get wiped out as opposed to areas. You already know the story like Sodom and Gomorrah. What was the name of the little city that all those cities were fried, but little Bela? Was it little Bela that survived? The whole community, not one person died. But we always have these scenarios of survivors.
So I like that because, you say you need wisdom. So that's just back to source, because wisdom is something you get from outside yourself.
I can't prepare for a negative, Paul. And I can't induce others to prepare for a negative, because I'm literally telling people to get ready for something that's now going to affect them because they put themselves on that frequency.
Okay, just out of curiosity, I've got a little card here, and so I've got something Flinders Petrie didn't have. It's a laser measure. So I've measured a lot of things in the King's Chamber, and this is my measurement of where exactly the coffer is right now. And the coffer, I'm sure, is in a different place it was for Flinders Petrie. So that's something I'm going to do something with someday. I've got all the measurements. I know what angle it is, where it is. And I wonder if that has a prophetic meaning, because if it's somewhere different now, and there's a big controversy as to where was it originally. Robert Grant says it was in the very middle of the King's Chamber, which I don't believe for a minute. Right now, it's basically on the east-west axis. It's right in the middle of the pyramid. On one side of the King's Chamber. But that's I just pointed that out because I agree with you in terms of historic measurers. Flinders Petrie is the guy. He measured that. He knew that the coffer in the King's Chamber would be such a piece of debated info that he measured every inch. He measured the distance at inch 1. He measured the distance at inch 2, etc. So his measurements are profound. And let me say one word about that coffer. I calculated this myself on the plane on the way back from my last trip to Egypt. The fine structure constant, Carl Sagan said, if we're going to send that rocket ship to outer space, if we're going to show people we're smart, make the cutting edge be the fine structure constant. The fine structure constant, Feynman, the atomic physicist, said it's like the God number. We stand in fear of it. We know what it is, but we don't understand it. So it's, in the formula you take, there's a massive formula. When you cancel all the things that should cancel, it's just a number that's left. So the fine structure constant is simply a number. And it's 1 over 137. It's 0.00729. If you take the only thing in that King's Chamber, no gold, no silver, no jewels, no hieroglyphics, no nothing, there's an empty coffer. Petrie called it a coffer, so I'm just going to use his terminology. There's a coffer there. All right.
Yeah.
If you take the volume of that coffer and divide it by the volume of the King's Chamber, you get 1 over 137. The thing that Carl Sagan said to tell the outer space people how smart we are, the ancient Egyptians are sitting back there pointing to us and saying, yeah, we knew something about that. We're showing you. So they knew the fine structure constant. It's absolutely obvious.
It's also in the one of the 4 cornerstones. Petrie had measured the 4 cornerstones, and one of the cornerstones is 137.2 something inches, which is the closest you can get in linear inches to the fine structure constant.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so let me just present a couple things. Jason, can I do that? I just thought I'd share some stuff that I'm working on right now.
I would like to make one comment about the sarcophagus.
Sure.
Since you were talking about it. So it's really compelling that you would take. So you're talking about, you measured the interior area of the sarcophagus, the empty sarcophagus, and it is a representation of the fine structure constant of the whole of the King's Chamber, right?
Yeah, but it's not the. If I remember right, I've got so many notebooks, but I think I took the entire volume. So in other words, if you take the outer and then just assume that everything that's the hard part and the inner space, which are about half and half, they each take about half the volume.
I can't believe you said that, about half and half. The French. The French measured the inside, they measured the outside, and they said it's one of the most, even though it doesn't look perfect and it's got that big dip in it, the French were like, whoever made this knew what they were doing, because the stone that makes the sarcophagus is exactly 144,000 cubic centimeters, which is the exact volume that's inside as well. The stone itself mirrors the empty space that it holds.
Yeah. It's amazing. All right, so let me see what I've got here. I'm going to share the screen here. So let's go to the entire screen. I'll share the first screen here, and let me. Okay, let me just. Here's just a thing, just a discovery that I just made. Okay, so Avebury and the Great Pyramid and their distances to the equator. So there's the equator. Okay, and up there is the largest stone circle in the world. That's Avebury. And then you got over there the Great Pyramid that we just been talking about. So you take their distances to the equator. Okay. So the distance from Avebury to the equator in royal cubits is 10,884,941. Okay, the distance from the Great Pyramid to the equator is 10,884,941 feet. So you've got the exact same number, one in royal cubits and one in feet. And what's interesting is, let me go back to that one.
It's called self-referencing, but it's just different dimensions of arithmetic. I show my community these in calendars all the time.
Yeah, and it's their way of showing this, that I've got to read my little box here now. The distance in feet from Avebury to the equator divided by the distance in feet from the Great Pyramid to the equator is 1.718. So that's the length of the cubit in feet. So what they're saying, because people say to me all the time when I talk about the meter and the foot and ancient Egyptian measurements, they couldn't have known the foot. The foot was invented, by the king. Oh, they couldn't have known the meter. That was invented by the French and the French Enlightenment. No. The foot and the meter are ancient, and it's through things like this, just like they're showing us the fine structure constant. The Egyptians couldn't have known that. That's a modern, like Carl Sagan says, that's the modern cutting edge of how smart we are. No, they knew it, and they knew this. They knew the length of the cubit.
The foot is a descendant of the megalithic yard. It goes back about 5,000 years. People think the British and the Brits or something invented foot and inches. But yeah, the Great Pyramid, whoever's really done some mathematical analysis of the interior measurements will know that thing is patterned in feet, inches, and it is commensurate with centimeters, and it's crazy.
That's right. So it's just another way of showing the same thing. You got 1.78, but also if you take the distance from Avebury to the equator, and then you add it to the distance from the Great Pyramid to the equator, and then you divide by the distance from the Great Pyramid to the equator, you get the Euler constant, which is 2.718. So again, they're saying, we knew this stuff. Trust us, we knew this, okay? And that last one, I should show that real quick. It's if you take all of those together, actually, if you take the Avebury, just the Avebury distance from Avebury down to the equator, it's I shouldn't have ran by that so fast here. So you got the couple things I just showed. You have the length of the cubit in feet. So you got the 1.718, but you also have Euler. When you add those two together and then divide by the Great Pyramid of the equator, you get Euler, 2.718. But this is the one I wanted to show here. So if you take that number right there, that's the number of feet from Avebury to the equator. It's 10 to the 6th. In other words, 10 million phi pi divided by e. The three major constants, phi, pi, and e, are right there in that number, phi pi divided by e. All right, so we know the Great Pyramid is a model of planet Earth, okay? Because if you take the height of the Great Pyramid and use that as a radius for a circle, it has the same area as the perimeter of the base of the Great Pyramid. So the circumference equals, that's an old one, we've all known that, but that was supposedly an impossible problem in the ancient world. How do you square the circle? The Great Pyramid shows how to square the circle. It also shows in these, what I'm showing here, that it knows the dimensions of the Earth and the Moon because that's built into it. And it's a 143,200 scale model of planet Earth. And I sometimes demonstrate this to my audiences, just tell them what the circumference is and divide it by the circumference of the Earth. So the ancient cubit of 1.76 is what yields that number. So you take that times the length in ancient cubits around the perimeter of the Great Pyramid, you multiply it by 43,200, and you get the ancient value for the polar circumference of the Earth. Okay, so that's kind of stuff is pretty well known. Now this is some of your people may know this. This is really the only writing in the Great Pyramid. At the original entrance of the Great Pyramid, these four letters in Berber are carved in there. They're very impressive letters. So I was given permission to go up there. So that's the original entrance to the Great Pyramid. Down there actually is where the entrance is. But I wanted to go up there. I wanted to go up there because that's where those four letters are. So
that's also that's also where there's a hidden shaft back there that goes all the way to the Queen's Chamber, all the way to the have you ever seen the schematic from the 1800s where somebody drew this is where a shaft should be? This is perfectly level with the Queen's Chamber floor, and it's right there under the chevrons. Where
you know what's interesting, Jason? You know, they had in March 2023 a press conference, you know, at the Great Pyramid base there, and they said that they had found, and they'd had a picture of the chamber that is behind here that the muon scans had found in 2017. They finally got the camera, and you know what? They didn't have to drill. Right to the right of my shoulder there's an opening. They put the endoscopic camera through that opening to photograph the chamber you're talking about, and they didn't even have to drill. They could have done this 20 years ago. They could have done it 100 years. Well, as long as we've had cameras, they could have done it.
Yeah.
So what's here? So there's the original entrance, the Great Pyramid. It's offset about 14 royal cubits. I got permission with some Texas adventurers that came with me to go up there. And this is a thing, Jason, which makes me feel destined to do what I do. That Dr. Schock is the one who did the analysis of the Berber here. So that's a D sound, that's a B sound, and that's an R sound. Debar,
that's a holy
place. That's my family last name. That's my mother's family name, James F. Dubar. My grandfather is director of the New York State Ranger School, and it means word. In Hebrew, it means word. And so, you know, the Great Pyramid is a word. It's like in the beginning was the word, and the Great Pyramid, older than the Bible, you know, is a great word. And so it just touches me that, you know, it's the same pronunciation as my family's last name. It makes me feel like I have a calling. Wow. So, you know, just so people know, that's my website, greatpyramid.org. I had that from the beginning of the internet. So I didn't buy that from somebody. I've had that from the very beginning, greatpyramid.org. And then my Instagram channel is @SageSilent. My YouTube channel is @The Great Pyramid. That's my handle. And you can get to my stuff there. All right, so here's what I worked on today. This is just show you the kind of stuff I get into. So there's this is a view I took of Google Earth, and I took a picture, and so you can see the step pyramid, the red pyramid, the bent pyramid. Okay, so there's the step pyramid. I lead tours to Egypt. I use it to make money to do my research. So there's the step pyramid, and there I am at the red pyramid, and here's the bent pyramid. I took this guy Chuck Holton, who's a Navy SEAL, and he's a war correspondent, goes to dangerous places on the earth. So I gave him a private tour of this. Okay, so if you take the line from the bent pyramid up to the step pyramid, okay, that angle tells you that it's a 13 square. Because the angle tells you what the geometry is. So it's 13 exactly equal squares, okay? Now, if you take from the red pyramid and you take that angle to the step pyramid, the geometry tells you, because that angle will tell you that it's a 7-fold square. And that's just exact. It's a 7-fold square. What's interesting is from the red pyramid to the step pyramid, just taking the straight north-south there, is exactly 7,000 meters. Now, that's not by chance. Oh, the Egyptians didn't know the meter. Oh, they didn't know the meter. Oh, yes, they did. There's an example right there. There's no way that would be exactly 7,000 meters. And then if you take from the bent pyramid up to the red pyramid, we know from that angle that too is a 7-fold square. And that's exactly 2,100 meters. So again, you know, it's and here's a close-up now of the black pyramid. So now we're down at the bent pyramid, the southernmost of the Dashur field. And so there I am with an Egyptologist, Sam, who's a great Egyptologist. There's the bent pyramid. And there's the black pyramid. which it's the most expensive to buy your way into if you're doing back sheets. It's $30,000. If you want to get underneath that, you got to pay $30,000. It's a lot cheaper for most other monuments, but that one is really special. Okay, so if you go from the Bent Pyramid to the Black Pyramid, it's 14.3 meters. It's 1,000 times root 2 meters. Okay, and then it's about 8.3 degrees, which means it's a 1/7 square, because that angle means they're exactly equal.
Hey,
and what's
you
interesting?
see that 14.3 meters?
Yeah.
The subterranean chamber underneath the Great Pyramid is exactly 14 feet in length.
Wow, that's interesting. That's 1,000 times root 2.
That's Petrie's measurement. It's 14 feet in length.
I'll have to look at that. I appreciate you telling me that. So the Black Pyramid has a base of 200 royal cubits, and each one of these squares that's in the 7 square there has a side of 200 meters. So they often do this juxtaposition, as we were saying, of, the one's in meters and one's in royal cubits, but it's exactly 200 meters, the side of each one of those 7 squares. So they're plainly telling us, the Egyptian sages are saying we knew the meter and we knew the square root of 2. Okay.
I just told you something wrong. It's 117 feet in length, which is 1,414 inches.
Okay, got it. Okay, well, that's interesting. That's good. So, as a young man, 50 years ago, I bought an old Jeep. It was actually a 1952 Willis, and this was 1973. I kissed my mom goodbye. I put a sign, Alaska or bust, and I went to Alaska in search of my soul. I did what every young man should do. I left everything. I left my fiance, my mother, my job, and I went in search of my soul. And,
this is 1973?
1973.
Man, that's the year of my birth, man.
All right. So I cut my hair. It wasn't a part of religious cult or anything. I cut all my hair off. I really felt I found the Lord. I found myself, finding, like you say, your connection to source. I knew my life had changed. And so, so my interest in prophecy as a young man led to my study of the Great Pyramid, because somebody told me, you mentioned the pyramidologist, Jason, somebody told me the Great Pyramid is a prophecy. So I've got a huge, Great Pyramid library, and, I became an avid student of the Great Pyramid. And in April of this year, I'll be leading my 21st tour to Egypt. And so that's my life. All right, now I've got a book on Amazon. I don't think you have this book, but it was actually published in a scientific journal, Archaeological Discovery, in 2024. I submitted. I didn't think I had a chance because it seems too esoteric. But then I realized this study is just measurements. That's the most scientific thing there is. So 29 meters across the bottom there, 97 meters up to the original entrance, 92 meters up the first ascending passage and the Grand Gallery, then 45 meters across the Queen's Chamber there, and then 8 meters from the entrance to the sarcophagus. So there you go, 29, 97, 92, 45, and 8. The speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second. So the title of my paper is the speed of the numbers of the speed of light in the lengths of the the Great Pyramid chambers in meters. There you have it. So 29979245 and I wrote a book about that, and again it was published, and all the major passages are used there, and even the well shaft was the beginning and the end were used. When you read the book, you see that. All right, so let me see what else I want to get into here. How about okay, let's just do a little bit of well, here's the kind of thing that is just, you see this all over. We've talked about this. You've got 200 cubits on Menkaure, 440 on the Great Pyramid. We know that. Well, if you go from the southwest corner of Menkaure to the southwest corner of the Great Pyramid, it's 1,000 times phi in terms of royal cubits. And if you go from the southeast corner of Menkaure to the southeast corner, it's 1,000 times the square root of pi. So phi and pi, these two beautiful Greek constants, are right there in the way they laid it out. So phi to me stands for beauty. Pi, the circle never ends, is eternity. Two great concepts. Be beautiful in your life, live for eternity.
Yeah, when you mix them together, you have the Mandelbrot set.
How about that? I should show that sometime. I'll have to, so this shaft right here, I don't know how I came across this. I mean, you can see the shaft. Nobody knows what it doesn't have a name or anything, but I started diagramming it, and this is what I discovered. So there's where that shaft is along the Khafre Causeway right there. There's a picture of it. It's actually a circle inside a square, if you see that. So the ancient symbol of heaven is the circle, and the ancient symbol of earth is the square. So it's this humble shaft, which nobody knows what it is sort of like the meaning of life, combining heaven and earth. So I found there was an 888 radius to the southeast corner of the Great Pyramid, to the middle of the Sphinx, 888 feet. I wrote a book. You've got my book, The Song of the Sphinx. 880 feet to Kenkawe's, the first female ruler in the history of the world. And that's where the second Sphinx is. I'm with Dr. Retta, who discovered the second Sphinx in that picture. And then to the east side of Khafre, it's 888 feet. There I am at the second pyramid. So the sacred shaft is the center of a sacred circle that touches the four major monuments around it with a radius of 888 feet. Now look at it a different way now. So that's pretty amazing in and of itself. So if we go there, let's do it in ancient cubits. So it's 500.
Was 1776.
Okay, yes, sir. So, but now we're looking at ancient cubits. So it's 504 ancient cubits there on the radius of this circle. So that means the circumference is 3168 ancient cubits, which John Michel says is the key number of ancient metrology. So the sacred
3168 is 792 times 4. 792 is the periodicity of Nemesis X. It appears
that's right.
792 years.
You'll see that number in a minute, Jason. So now if you take the perimeter of the Great Pyramid in the orange I just showed you there, it's 31,680 Egyptian inches. So we got 3168 in the Great Pyramid. Now I'm going to put Stonehenge on here and take Flinders-Petrie's measurements. And so you take the Sarsen circle there, it's 316.8 feet. So Stonehenge, you got 316.8. That's Flinders-Petrie's measurement. Okay, then we're going to go to, so look at the 3168s. Now we're going to look at planet Earth. You put a square around planet Earth, and guess what? It's 31,680 miles. So look at this. Look at this. The 3168's all over. In Stonehenge, it's in feet. Stonehenge is in feet. The Great Pyramid is in inches. In my holy circle that I discovered, it's in cubits. And on the Earth, it's in miles. This amazing number in all these different ways, different monuments. Different
Larry, you're missing one huge one. This is amazing, but you're missing one huge one.
What is it? Tell me.
The mean diameter of the moon, 7,920 miles.
Okay, well, look, I think I might get in. Let me see what I got here, because I put this one together a while ago. Okay, so we got the 3168. Let's turn the circles into squares with the same perimeter, okay? So there's the square. There's the square for my holy circle, and there's the square for the Earth. Okay, so look at this. Let's take the side length of each of these squares. Okay, so the side length, 7920 in Stonehenge. In the Great Pyramid, it's 7920 inches. And in my holy circle, it's 792.0 ancient cubits. And for the Earth, the diameter of the Earth is 7920 miles. There's your 792, Jason, right there.
Yeah, it is. I said moon, didn't I? I meant Earth. I said moon.
I thought I included the moon here. I didn't. But in Stonehenge, it's in feet. In the Great Pyramid, it's in inches. My holy circle, it's in cubits, and the Earth, it's in miles. Okay,
so these are Nemesis X numbers. You're producing these in Nemesis X numbers from external mathematical dimensions, whereas the internal mathematical dimensions of Great Pyramid are all Phoenix numbers. How crazy! How crazy is this?
That's cool. And this book right here, I'm proud to say that I gave up Super Bowl Sunday a couple of years ago, and instead of watching the tube like everybody, I drove to the Father Hesburgh Library at Notre Dame University to get this book. There's only a few copies in the world, and I took a picture of every page of Ancient Metrology by John Michel, and the subtitle is "The Dimensions of Stonehenge and of the Whole World as Therein Symbolized." So here, I
love John Michel. I have his book, Dimensions of Paradise.
So yeah, but this is a low circulation book, and 3168 he said is the major number there. Okay, so let's look at the meter in the King's Chamber. I showed you the meter, in other places there. So here's the top view, the King's Chamber, the plan view. So we know across it, it's 20 cubits, and we know that from north to south, it's 10 cubits. Okay, so the perimeter obviously is going to be 60 cubits, 20 plus 20. But the 60 cubits is also 10 pi meters. So they knew pi and they knew the meter, because that circumference, that is perimeter, is 10 pi meters. Okay, let's look at this. This is one I just discovered this recently. Okay, so here's the King's Chamber, and there's 8 squares I've got there, and each one of those 8 squares is 5 squared meters. They have sides of 5 squared. They knew phi and they knew the meter. Okay, Okay, look at this one, the north or south wall. So this is not the floor now. We're going to look at the wall. So we know that it's 18.18 cubits high. That's Flinders Petrie, and 20 cubits across. That means the diagonal is exactly 12 meters. Why did they got the floor 10 by 20? Why didn't they make the ceiling an even number like 12 or 15? They made it 11.18 because only that yields a diagonal of exactly 12 meters. So did they know the meter? And then the area of the west wall of the King's Chamber encodes the meter to foot conversion, which I related to a discovery they recently found from Da Vinci. But here's the west wall of the King's Chamber. So you got 10 cubits that way. When you take the higher floor, it's 11.11 cubits. So we've got the numbers in feet there. And so 1921 feet times the 17,833, and you get 328.02 square feet. And 328 is the conversion factor from meters to feet. So again, they're showing us we knew feet, we knew cube. So let's look at the fine structure constant. This is one of my discoveries. Okay, so you got 10 cubits for the north-south dimension of the King's Chamber. You got 20 cubits for the east-west. All right, then you got the diagonal. We know that's it's 22.36 cubits. You just do the Pythagorean theorem, you get 22.36 cubits. Okay, that equals 11.70 meters. So what? Any cubit measure can be converted to meters. Oh, because the square root of 137 is 11.7. So the fine structure constant, the square root of the fine structure constant is 11.7. So besides the sarcophagus volume, which I told you about earlier, showing 137 in the King's Chamber, you got a second thing in the King's Chamber saying we knew the fine structure constant, because there's the formula from which we get the fine structure constant. It's got, the pi and Euler and the Higgs boson or whatever. And when you cancel those numbers out, it's, alpha, and 1 over alpha is 11.7. So, and the fine structure constant has to do with the separation between matter. You see the periodic table of the elements representing the matter on this earth, but then the outer shells of the electrons where you head toward energy and light. That's the fine structure constant mediates that distance between body and spirit, basically. So incredible that it's in the King's Chamber. Okay, one more thing I'll show here, just to show some more King's Chamber revelations. So let's look at the blocks of the King's Chamber. What do they reveal? There's so many things here, okay? So let's a quick primer, though, to help people that might not know about this stuff. These are constants like air and gold and DNA and giraffes. Okay, Euler, 2.78. It's a constant. It's like a giraffe. It's like water. It's a real constant. Pi, 3142. We know that. And phi is 1.618. Okay. So discovered by Euler in 1731, and phi and pi are said to go back to the Greeks 500 BC. All right. So here's a plan of the King's Chamber. You can see the ceiling and the floor and the four walls. Okay. So if you take the top two courses, you have in there 31 blocks. Okay. And then if you take the next row there, the third and fourth row, you have 42 blocks. Okay. So there's pi, 3.142. All right. Now let's take the row below that. And in that row, you've got 27 blocks, and if you take the blocks on the floor, you've got 18. Oh, there's Euler. 27.18 is the Euler constant. Okay, now where's phi? Okay, well, we got we've shown that pi is there. We've shown Euler is there, but where's phi? Okay, so the west wall, the top block, you got 1. Okay, the north wall and the east and south wall together, you put those together, you got 6. And then in the west wall, the blocks below it are 18. There you go. 1 point, and then 0, the door there is not a block, that's a 0. So you have 1.6180. There's phi. Okay. And then
that is a perfect phi. Wow.
Yeah, and you take the east wall there, you've got 26 blocks, and then you take the south wall, the first 4, and you've got 18, and so that's phi squared, 2.618. It's the only number that adding 1 to it is also the same as its square. Okay, so phi, pi, and e right here in the King's Chamber. What else we got? Okay, 1, 4 on the west wall, and then below that, the rows 3 and 5, you got 1, 4. That's square root of 2. Okay, and then north wall, you got 2, and then the second row there, you got 7, and then the third, fourth, and fifth, you got 18, and there's Euler again, 2.718. Okay, we go over here to the east wall, you got 1 on top, then you got 5 in the second row, and then you got 7. Okay, 1.57 is half a pi. And then the south wall, you got 3 on the top. You got the next 2 rows, you got 14, and there's pi again. Okay. All right, so we got root 2, Euler, pi, phi. What else we got here? Okay, the east and south walls, you got 17 there, and then 32, and then 5. So 173205, square root of 3. All right. Now you take the bottom, the fifth row of those three walls, there's 22 there. And then you take the top two, there's 36. So that's the square root of 5. And somebody think you could cherry pick these. No, you couldn't. You could build a block that would just be random and find all these. There's not a way in the world. So you got just showing the top wall again here. And then you're going to see what I'm getting at here. Just showing these different ways of doing this. Okay, these are all the Fibonacci numbers. We got 1 as I've been going, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34. And then how about alpha, the fine structure constant? So we got 1, and then we got 3, and then you got 7 right there. So 137, and then you got 0, the door. And so 1370, the fine structure constant. Then we got this 36, and that is the fine structure constant, 137.036. And then you take the sarcophagus, and as I showed you, or as I said earlier, it's 1 over 137. All right, so and there I always take my groups into the sarcophagus there, and all right, so let me just I think there's something else I want to show you too. I think there's something else that I've been working on here. So let me grab it from the window here. All right. Well, let me do this one. This is a fun one. I want to do this one first right here. So let's go up here to the top here. This one. Okay, here we go. All right. This is one of my discoveries that I am just really, I think is so cool. Okay. So watch this. So at Stonehenge, if you take the station stones, the 4 station stones, the perimeter is 7920 inches if you go around those 3. Okay, so that's kind of channeling, the things we've talked about. All right, that's a 5, 12, 13 triangle, by the way. So Stonehenge, those station stones is a 5, 12. Now let's go from Stonehenge to Lundy Island, which means the island of the right angle. And then let's go north to the Preseli Hills, where the Stonehenge bluestones come from. Okay. That's where they come from. And then we'll go back to Stonehenge, and guess what? You have a 5, 12, 13 triangle that's 2,500 times the size of the one that's in Stonehenge. 5, 12, 13. All right, let's look at the American dollar bill. Oh, that pyramid, guess what? 5, 12, 13. Okay, let's look at the 3 capitals of the UK. Edinburgh, London, and Cardiff, Wales. Okay, guess what? 5, 12, 13 triangle. How do they do that? Okay, so obviously a 5, 12, 13 triangle is a holy dimension. It's a 5, 12, 13. Okay, so now let's do this. Castlerig, one of the largest stone circles in the world, an ancient stone circle. I've measured every one of the stones. It's at Castlerig. Okay, so there's a top view picture of it. There I am, measuring every one of the stones. All right, then the Durham obelisk. I went to Durham because my wife student taught there, and so when we were traveling through England, we stopped there. What the heck? And there's this obelisk I found, which almost nobody. I talked with people that lived in Durham all their life, people that worked at hotels, cab drivers. They didn't even know this was there. It's kind of hidden in the schoolyard somewhere. And here I am at the Durham obelisk. Okay, so these 2 major structures. So I thought I'd measure the distance between them. Okay, so the distance between Castlerig and the Durham obelisk, and it's 61.84 miles. And I thought, holy cow, if you divide that by 5, it's 12.368. So what? Well, look at this. Here's that 2,500 times 5, 12, 13 triangle. But if you divide the 5 into 2 and 3, that middle hypotenuse right there is 12.368, which just happens to be the number of lunations in a year. 12.368. So that's an incredible number, and that's the unit value for the 5. So I thought, okay, so if we take that as the 5, then the question is, where does the 12 side go? You got the 5 side of a 12, 13 triangle. Where does the 12 side go? That's what I wanted to find out. So you're using Google Earth, I could find it. So 12 times 12.368, and I did that on Google Earth. It's 148.54 miles. So I went up there. Where does it lead me? And look at this. This is up in Scotland, and look what I found. You see that? That's a unicorn. That is a unicorn on the soil of Scotland. It's the national mascot of the nation of Scotland.
Oh, okay, so it's an effigy mound.
You know what? I don't know anybody that knows this except for me and now your viewers. I can't wait the next time I go to Scotland. I got the GPS point for that to go there and see what's there. But that unicorn, I'm not making that up. That's there. And I found it through the magic of the 5, 12, 13 triangle. Okay, so I mean, it's just, to me, it's just amazing that the national mascot for Scotland.
That's interesting. You show the pyramid schematics, and it shows the 888 and 888 diameters, which
Yeah.
so I mean, no, excuse me, the radius was 888, and then it was 888 and another one. Well, that's 1776. You just showed a 148 mile measurement as well, which 148 also dissolves to 1776 in inches. If you were to take 148 and 148 multiplied by 12, it too is 1776.
That's cool. You know, I'm sure that stuff's embedded in these things here. I want to share one more thing with you, Jason, and I'll come back to just, you know, talking live with you. But, you know, the Tomb of the Birds, I in my 21 tours, there was one tour where all my tours canceled. The war had broken out in Israel. I told everybody on my tour, because it was just a few weeks before we were going, I said, I'm still going. Well, nobody came with me. So I went myself. And so I thought, well, I'll go to the Tomb of the Birds, which has been locked since Zawi Hawass locked it after Andrew Collins, you know, discovered it was the entrance to the underworld. And I thought I'll just go there and take a picture to say that, you know, I was at the Tomb of the Birds. So, because I went there by myself, you can't take a tour there because it's off limits. I had to sneak there. Okay. So, and I wrote about this book. I wrote a book called Anatomy of Egyptian Adventure. I asked my tourists to write things too, but most of the chapters are my discoveries. So there's my discoveries on the Tomb of the Birds. So, you know, Andrew Collins wrote a book, Beneath the Pyramids, and he's talking about the Tomb of the Birds. So this is me taking a video of myself when I'm at the Tomb of the Birds there. Okay, so let me show you what I discovered. So when I first got in there, I couldn't believe it. The door was open. I was scared to death. I was alone. I didn't have a lot of power in my flashlight. You know, if I would have gone into those chambers, I, you know, wouldn't have a phone. If I break my leg, I could be caught in there. But anyways, I did some stuff. So here's you can see my shadow. And that's when you head from the south end of the Tomb of the Birds, from the north end, you head this south, you come to this altar at the end. Okay, you can see my shadow over it. So that's the burial cove, I called it, you know. And so this is me live when I'm there in the first time that someone's been in there since they closed it for Andrew Collins 17 years ago or whatever. So I measured it because the ancients left their clues in numbers. Okay, so I had a couple different forms of measurement, including the tool that's on your iPhone. And so I measured that niche right there. And so here's my measurements right there. You see them right there. There's the niche. And so I'll show you my measurements. The length is 3.5 feet. The width is 0.584 feet. And the depth there is the interesting number, Jason, of 0.792 feet. Okay, so when you multiply those all out, it's phi cubed. 1.618 feet cubed. So this little, you know, pygmy thing, all these stupid Aboriginal, you know, Egyptians just carving little dumb things in their cave. So, you know, this is something Andrew Collins never discovered. He was in there, but he didn't know the stuff was there. So message, we know the foot and we know phi. Okay, there's more. Okay, so what about the niche that the niche is in? Because there is a niche right there. So the bottom is 5.44 feet. The top is pi feet, 3.14 feet. Interesting. So you divide the length by the height, which is pi, you get 1.732, which is the square root of 3. So not only do we know phi and we know, you know, the foot, but we also know the square root of 3. Okay. And then if you take the diagonal of this niche, it's tau, which is 2 pi. And then there's more. If you take, there's tau, which is 2 pi, you know, feet. If you take that direct perpendicular to the corner, that's 2.72 feet. What's that, Jason? That's the megalithic yard. There's the megalithic yard. They're right there, okay?
That's the main measurement that in the 19th century all the authors were writing about.
That's right. So now look at this. I thought the Tomb of the Birds is so amazing. I need to do some more with it. So here's what I did. You can see the Great Pyramid of the East, and the Tomb of the Birds is on exactly the same latitude as the southern end of Hemiuna's tomb and the middle of the Great Pyramid. So it's not placed where it is by chance. Okay. So let's look at this. So the Tomb of the Birds is the entrance to the underworld. It's darkness, and the Great Pyramid has always been the chamber of light. Okay. So we got darkness and light here. So if you take the distance from the Tomb of the Birds straight east to the middle of the Great Pyramid, it's 749.48 meters. Okay. So you make a circle out of that. Okay. So now your diameter is going to be 1498.96 meters. Okay. So what? Well, if you go across and back, in other words, double the diameter, it's 2997.92. That's the number of kilometers per second of the speed of light. They're showing by going across and back on this diameter, they knew the speed of light. And here's what I find fascinating. using the diameter twice indicates they were aware of the physical limitation of measuring the speed of light. Because, Jason, most people don't know this. We've never measured the speed of light. The speed of light has never been measured. We don't have clocks sophisticated enough to measure it. All our measurements of the speed of light, in which we say it's 299,792,458 meters per second, are based on shooting the beam off of something and measuring it when it comes back. All the measurements we have of the speed of light are the average of the two-way speed of light, and we can't be certain that the speed at which it travels to hit the thing it bounces off of is the same speed as it returns. So all we know is the average of the two-way speed of light. And so I think by the Tomb of the Birds being the center of a diameter that you have to go across twice to get the speed of light is saying, not only do we know the speed of light, we also know the physical limitation of measuring the speed of light. So, and then there's more. So Hemiunu, I think, is the architect of the Great Pyramid and most of the Giza Plateau. There's his tomb right there. So there's the Tomb of the Birds, and it's right on the southern border. And it's exactly 17,314.5 inches. You can do it yourself on Google Earth. That's the distance. Oh, guess what? That's the square root of the speed of light. Just put it into your calculator. 299,792,458 divided by that number, you're going to get the speed of light. Unbelievable. Encoded between the Tomb of the Birds and Hemiunu's tomb. Okay, but there's more.
Pretty interesting.
So you got
there.
Tomb of the Birds. You got this line. I told you they're all in the same latitude, the center of the Great Pyramid, south of Hemiunu's tomb, the Tomb of the Birds. Okay, so if we go across there, totally in the phi proportion. From the Tomb of the Birds to Hemiunu's tomb is 1, and from Hemiunu's tomb, 0.6. Hemiunu was saying, look, I'm the guy. You know, I got a lot of beauty here. I designed this plateau, and look where I put my tomb. Man, it's showing that I know all this stuff. So do I know phi? Do I know feet? Do I know the speed of light? Do I know the limitations of the speed of light? So this is incredible. Okay. All right. So let me go back to, have I stopped sharing now?
Yeah, you stop sharing.
Okay, good. So that, that's just, the kind of thing that excites me and that I get into. And I always, when I lead a tour, I always get there a week before my people so I can do some measuring and some discovering and stuff. And I've led tours to Stonehenge. I'm leading a tour to southern France. You may be interested in that, where the place where the Da Vinci Code came from and Mary Magdalene and all that. We're going to be going to there's a lot of sacred geometry in southern France too. That one's going to be in June.
You're going to go to Karnak?
I'm not. I would have, except I've got a family wedding. My youngest brother, his daughter is having a destination wedding in France. So instead of going to Karnak, I'm going to just head up to her wedding after I lead my tour to southern France there.
Huh. So you're moving so fast. I just didn't want to interject at all.
I'm sorry. I knew I was probably going by.
It's good. It's good. Absolutely. I'm going to share my screen now.
All right,
so
good.
I just wanted to show you. I just wanted to show you this real quick. It's just for your future reference. This is Petrie's. This is Petrie's measurement right here. Do you see my cursor? So from the descending conjunct right here where it joins, this is the joint between the floor joint and the descending passage joint. The problem is that it's not even. It was noticed by Petrie to be at a slant. So
yes, that's right.
One side is 2 inches different than the other side, which creates two different lengths for the whole descending passage. But here, on one side, it's 1,414 inches from the back of the descending to the floor joint, and on the other side of the tunnel, it is 1,412. But yeah, I have all the Petrie measurements, and that's what I love, going through these measurements. I find stuff all the time.
So is it 4146 or 141?
It's 14. Here it is right here. It's 1416. I mean, excuse me, it's 1414.
1414. Okay,
it's 1,000, just like the same number you showed when you were doing your measurements. You were showing.
So that's square root of 2 then. Wow, I never saw that before. I'm gonna have to get into that. One of the things I try and interpret, the constants, because it's one thing.
Oh shit! Hold on. Whoops. Sorry about that. I was trying to get my chart off.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
So I try and and in my Sphinx book that you have, I get into it toward the end of the book, trying to interpret what these different things mean. So square root of 2 and square root of 3. Here's what I think this means when they're showing that. Okay, if you have if I have a square right here, the diagonal of that square is the square root of 2. If I have a cube, now I'm three-dimensional, the diagonal that goes across the 3D from one corner to the opposite corner is the square root of 3. So the square root of 2 symbolizes to me paper. It's a plane, it's flat. So the square root of 2 means you're planning something. You put it on paper. You draw the shrubbery you're going to put around your house in the front. So you on 2D, and then 3D is you go out and dig the holes and you put it in. So 2D is planning, 3D is pulling it off. And I think that's one of the things they're saying in these numbers. When you get into it there's meaning more than just math. 2D is, hey, go back to the drawing board, figure it out, draw it, conceptualize it. It's one thing to conceptualize something. It's quite another thing. And, we can show the blueprints of the Great Pyramid, but they actually built it. So they went from 2D to 3D. So you want as much as you can to get the 2D. We get it from people like Flinders Petrie, but what's amazing to me is no one knows exactly what was in those blueprints because we don't have enough evidence. If you build a pyramid, strictly a pyramid from the phi dimension, if you build a pyramid from the pi dimension, if you build a pyramid built in Euler, visually you wouldn't, if I put them on the table in front of you, Jason, this one was built by pi, this was built by phi, you would not be able to visually tell the difference. And so we don't really know. People often think it's a phi pyramid or a pi pyramid because if it's phi, it means the half base is 1, the height is the phi squared, and the slant height is phi squared, and the height is phi. So 1 phi squared, and the dimensions we have of the Great Pyramid come real close to that, but we don't know because we don't have a top to measure to. We don't have casing stones to measure from. So we can't. As much as we know about the Great Pyramid, we can't prove what was on Hemiuna's blueprint. We don't know exactly what the dimensions were. So that's incredible. We know so much about it, and yet we don't know the most important thing, exactly what it was.
We do have some interesting. It only comes out of Egypt from the Copts, but the Egyptian Copts tell a story that sounds just like Enoch. Like in the book of Jasher, we have Enoch ruling over 130 kings and princes before he ascends into heaven. And he leaves the divine instructions behind for the Sethites. And the Sethites take the divine instructions and they build the altar at Akuzan, at the place where Enoch ascended into heaven. The exact same story is told in the Egyptian Coptic records that were preserved by the Saracens, the Muslim chroniclers. And they said the king of Egypt was named Surid, and he ruled over 130 nomes of Egypt. And he saw a vision of the great flood, and he knew the world was going to be destroyed. And God spoke to him, and he held a council. And in this council, it was determined that not only is the world going to be destroyed, but we are going to build a structure, and we are going to record all the weights and measures, all of the mysteries of numbers. Every bit of this is in the legend of Surid. And they were going to preserve a structure that was going to preserve the past, the present, and the future, all in one structure. And Surid went out and he had this whole thing built. And even in the early Christian period, we have so many ancient authors that all tell us that the legend of Surid of the Egyptian Copts is the exact as Hermes and Enoch. They're talking about the same one. Remember what Hermes was famous for? Hermes was famous for raising a heap, and Hermian heaps became a symbol for the flood. Anytime you saw a pile of rocks that was shaped like a pyramid, in ancient times they call it a Hermian heap. But in the legend of Hermes, he was famous for building a stone heap before the flood. But yeah, so I'm not surprised by all these measurements. The Great Pyramid is going to have all these constants. You've probably found things that engineer David Davison and Adam Rutherford and Menzies and Alder Smith, you know all the names I do. You know all the greats too, all the pyramidologists. They probably didn't see all the stuff you just showed us. They found a lot. They found a lot.
When you introduced me that way, Jason, that's really how I cut my teeth. I actually corresponded with Adam Rutherford back when he was live. His son James came to the U.S. and did a lecture series. I met him in Park Ridge when he came here. And so I am part of that lineage, but the way I've broken away from it is this. They really believed, like Rutherford believed, that the Great Pyramid alone was the revelation from God, and the rest was paganism. And I have learned, I probably started with that same thing because I was their disciple, but I have learned just by the things I showed today about the red pyramid, the bent pyramid, all that the whole thing was laid out by Hemiunu and by, probably maybe Joseph. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but, some of the great, who built the step pyramid.
You can say Joseph. When I hear you say Joseph, to me, it translates as Zoser. The material that
Imhotep.
Yeah.
Zoser's. Yeah. So that's what I meant to say. I didn't mean to say Joseph. I meant to say Imhotep. Some people say that Joseph was Imhotep, but Imhotep was one person that wasn't a pharaoh that's as famous as any pharaoh, and they've never found his body, which could lead to him being Joseph, because Joseph's body was obviously taken out of Egypt, but they've never found Imhotep's grave. But so that since I look at the sacred setup of even Stonehenge and other places, I can't say with Adam Rutherford that just the Great Pyramid was a revelation from God and all the rest is paganism.
I believe Stonehenge was the same culture that built the Great Pyramid of Giza complex. I've read Sir Norman Lockyer, 1901, 1902, very compelling material. Sir Norman Lockyer believed there was a connection between Giza and Stonehenge. Silbury Hill that you talk about, most people in the UK don't even know. Silbury Hill that looks like a nice green conical hill, hill. It's 130 feet high. But an archaeologist named Kennedy in the 1960s dug into it. And when he dug into it, they found chalk blocks. It's a pyramid in the UK, and they made him cover it back up with earth. They planted grass back over it. But Silbury Hill is an actual white chalk. It's a chalk white block pyramid in the UK.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I'd heard rumors about that when I was there, but they've pretty much covered that story over. Yeah.
It's crazy. So your name, De Beer. The deal. I had the hairs on my arms rose up when you said that was Berber for De Beer. The reason is your name being akin to that or associated is coincidence, and coincidence is spiritual. It's very spiritual.
Yeah,
but I can't remove myself from the knowledge that De Beer in Old Semitic means the word. And when you said this was inscribed, and when you said it was inscribed on the Great Pyramid, and the Great Pyramid was anciently also referred to as the Logos. It was called El Kahudi, the lights, but it has an alternate meaning the word. And that's crazy that you would say De Beer.
So when I was a little boy, his wife, my grandfather, James F. Dubar, she used to say to me, Larry, your grandfather is a man of his word. Some men just talk. If your grandfather says something, it's so. So here I am as a little boy hearing his wife say he's a man of his word. And Alan Green says it also means Holy of Holies. I'm not sure. I haven't seen that myself, but it certainly means word. If you look in Hebrew, it means word. And so, the Great Pyramid is a word. It's a solid prophetic, just like in the beginning was the word in the Bible. Well, before the Bible,
this goes into the apocryphal material, because if you read the Shepherd of Hermas, and you see that the word had 7 archangels with him, and they're letting souls go through a gate. But then they're telling some souls they can't go through that gate. And each soul is holding a stone, and those stones are being put into a monument of God, and the righteous stones are being let into the monument, while the unrighteous, their stones are being taken from them and cast out into the field. This is the Shepherd of Hermas. And one of the things that the chief angel was called was the Logos, the word in the Shepherd of Hermas. This is literally a vision, the Shepherd of Hermas, of the souls of mankind participating in building a spiritual monument, which is described as a white pyramid. So Shepherd of Hermas is a really interesting text. It's long.
You think that the Great Pyramid is the Pillar of Enoch, right?
Yes, well, I think it's just one of the names. It was Pillar of Enoch. It was actually built by the Sethites. I think it was built by the Sethites. Everything that we have about the Great Pyramid is antediluvian. And I know that you and I have corresponded in the past, and you disagree. You believe the Great Pyramid was built after the flood. And I think a lot of that belief system comes from the fact that a lot of people have been persuaded by people like Graham Hancock and Robert Schoch that the Great Flood was like 9,000, 10,000 BC. And, you know, I'm a chronologist, and I'm always going to contend that point. We have so much chronological material for the Great Flood being in the 23rd century. Even the biblical chronology is 23rd century BC. So I cannot see the Giza complex, which has marine fossils attached to the rocks, and the testimony of Frederick Norton Lewis from the 1700s, where seashells were all over around the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids. I can't see that the Giza complex would have ever been built after the flood, when every legend, every tradition, everything we know about it was built in the pre-flood period.
You know, my disagreement, I know what you say about the rising up of the Mediterranean and all that. My great source of disagreement with you on this is simply my belief in the devastating power of the flood. The erosive power of water is incredible, and at the scale at which the flood was, even the Great Pyramid couldn't withstand that. That's why I don't. Plus, I do think that it was that you can find Khufu this side of the flood. You know, that you can do a chronology. But I agree with your 1656 and your 2348 and all that. But I think there are several calendars, and so you have to know which one you're using. And if you use the Septuagint, you're going to have a longer time period there. You're going to have more time between the flood and the Tower of Babel if you use the Septuagint. So I think in reality, even though I think that for calendar purposes, your 2348, your 1656 are good, they're data points, that there's also calendars that are meant to not be perfect, where you can draw data from like you do, but just the actual time frame. I do think it was longer than that. I do think the flood was probably before 2348, because I do think that Khufu was probably 2500 BC, and I think he's after the flood. So if I use a Septuagint chronology, I can fit it all in. But that, so I respect your opinion.
I didn't know you.
Let me say this. I would like to believe you, honest to God. I would like that the Great Pyramid was built before the flood. That would make things so easy for me, but I just don't think it was. So
that's good. I mean, you're going against the grain, because you do know all the traditions say it was built before the flood. All the Arabian chroniclers from Biruni, all the way to all the Sufic material, all the Hermetic material. Yeah, everybody says it was, especially in the what is it? The Egyptian Coptic material. They're the Egyptian Copts are literally the only people in the world that gave us a history of the building of the pyramids.
Yeah, the Copts are, and Manu Safzadeh in his book Under the Sphinx goes to the Coptic records to get at the real story of the Sphinx. So I agree with you there. But I would say that here could be the way that I'd respond to you. So when Zawi Hawass took his enemies, Graham Hancock, John Anthony West, and Robert Bauval, when he took them up to the relieving chambers in the Great Pyramid, because they were enemies. They said, in their books, they just, he's a Belgian Jew, Hawass said, and they called Hawass a liar. But when they got the invitation, Hawass called his three enemies, Graham Hancock, John Anthony West, and Robert Bauval, hey, I'll take you up to the relieving chambers. Okay, we'll go. Those guys had all been on record that had to be fake. The graffiti up there had to be fake, because they knew the Great Pyramid, like the Sphinx, was 10,000 years old. They all came down that day, and they all recanted. Now, sometimes Graham Hancock's kind of going back, but I can show you the records. They recanted. And so what Robert Bauval said the next day was, okay, it was designed in 10,000 BC, but it wasn't built until 2500. I totally agree with you that the Great Pyramid was designed by anciently, totally, that the plans for it were passed down, and it was built later. So Robert Bauval, that's what he did. He said, okay, it wasn't built then, it was designed then. So that's what I'm saying. I'll join you in believing it was designed then. So we disagree, Jason. It's fine. I respect you. I
get it. It's not even worth arguing over. But you do know that the Great Flood wasn't the only flood. There's 3 huge floods in the human historical record, and the flood of Noah was the second one. There was one worse after that. There was one pretty bad before it too, and they're all in Hebrew. They're all in the apocryphal and pseudo-apocryphal texts. They're very well documented. But I'm just not a Graham Hancock fan, and I'm going to go with the Egyptian dating with for the Great Pyramid complex, because even Egyptologists go with the 28th, 25th century BC is when they believe the Great Pyramids were built, and I'm on board with that. That's for Giza. I'm on board with that because I'm not going to buy the Ice Age dating. You're never going to convince me the Great Pyramid was built in the Ice Age.
Jason, I knew when they started talking about the Younger Dryas, like years ago, I knew that they were going to try and make that a solid point that they were all going to then use. And sure enough, it's like what we know about is true about the flood. We know that the flood really happened. They're making stuff up with this Younger Dryas stuff, but they're using that to be their standard because they've all agreed to agree on it. So now they think they've got a slam dunk in the Younger Dryas.
Have you ever read the Humphreys Brewer account? Colonel Weiss, when the Khufu deal was in there, Humphreys Brewer he claims he was one of them that made he says the way they make the Egyptian dyes on the Nile are the same way they made them in the 1800s. So he said he helped Weiss paint that in the deal in the Davidson relieving chambers because they were running out of funding, and he didn't want to return back to England a disgrace, and at the last minute he had painted those in there and claimed and sent a telegraph overland and to different offices and military offices, and then they conveyed the information back to London that we've discovered evidence that Khufu, that Herodotus is right. Khufu did build the Great Pyramid, and all of a sudden he got more funding. They sent more ships to go help him, and only after Humphreys Brewer was discarded and Colonel Howard Weiss got all the popularity, did Humphreys Brewer come forward and tell him, man, all this is a fraud, man. I participated in this. It's all BS. But by that time, man, nobody cared. Well,
if people are interested in my response to that, if you go to my website, greatpyramid.org, easy to remember, Great Pyramid, and I'm a not-for-profit, so it's .org. On my blog there, I respond to that. I respond to the book that Scott Crichton wrote where he talks about that. And every point I take down. And the thing is, Zawi Hawass is now, he was on, the Matt Beal program and stuff. He is doing more research there with modern methods. It should be easy to prove, because even Scott Crichton, the guy who's writing the book against this, admits there are a lot of ancient writings there. So there are ancient scribblings. Everybody, Graham Hancock's on to, they all agree there's some there. So the question is, are there some fakes among the plethora of actually true marks? And here's the thing. This is one of the main points. The names that were forged were unknown. The names that were unknown. Egyptology was a young science. They didn't know the Medjedu name of Khufu. It's there. There's no way that was fake. They didn't know it. So what Scott Crichton did, realizing that's going to be the killer to his thing, in his book, he makes it a major plank. He makes it up. The main plank he depends on, this book where he's trying to, say that graffiti's bad. He says, well, Weiss found the Medjedu and other writings like that, didn't tell anybody, wrote it down to a notebook that nobody ever saw. He took that and he put that in. He makes it up. There's no evidence anywhere. Nothing. He makes it up because he realizes that's the killer to his theory. So the point is,
okay. There's no. I'm willing to throw out Humphreys Brewer. Let's just say he made it all up. Let's just throw it all out. So let me offer you another alternative. One more alternative, because you've been inside, you've been in and out that Great Pyramid, so you absolutely know how much masonry is here and how much surface area is here. And for us not to find any Egyptian hieroglyphics, we don't even find the later hieratic. We don't even find the later demotic. We don't find anything. So this was found in the relieving chambers. Now, I'm willing to throw out Humphreys Brewer, but I also know that it is a tradition among monarchs throughout world history to put their names on structures for which they did not build later. And also to eliminate the cartouches and the names and throne names, dynastic names, milk names, whatever, of their enemies. So, in Egypt, they did that a lot. Like when one dynasty overturned another, they would go in there on the monuments and etch out names and those. So could it be possible that sometime in the Middle Kingdom that somebody had put that in there as like a, hey, look, maybe it wasn't Coward Weiss, it was somebody in the Middle Kingdom. It just seems so odd that
when I was a young man, I worked as a brick mason. And so we were building a decorative wall inside a restaurant on Manheim Road in Chicago, near O'Hare Airport. And so, it was a wall. And so we put wine bottles and stuff in it, mix the mortar in there, this decorative wall. And so we said, hey, let's write some things and put in these bottles just in case in 25 years. And this was 50 years ago I did this. So I remember writing that Nixon was the Antichrist. I remember I wrote that. Okay, so I'm a young, 18-year-old, Mason writing Nixon. Jason, don't you know that no king wrote those? Those were written in Aswan. Those weren't written up in the king's chamber. Those were written in Aswan, and then the blocks were carried there. I used to write on 2x4s when I was working on construction sites. Those were workers' writings. Those weren't written by any king. That's scribbling of workers, and they still use the same, kind of.
And that also answers for why the cartouche of Khufu was wrong. It wasn't exactly correct. Some people have analyzed that too and said it was a little off. So I get it 100%. So
yeah.
So with the Great Pyramid having this cartouche in it, I can eliminate that from my field. We have another anomaly. We have an Egyptologist who studied the Sphinx. And he had a German Egyptologist had a real big problem because he is a specialist in Old and Middle Kingdom Egyptian antiquities. And he pointed out that the headdress on the Sphinx is unknown in the Old Kingdom. No Old Kingdom pharaohs wore any type of hat. After the first intermediate period, which was a few hundred years, in the Middle Kingdom started, all of a sudden pharaohs all had that headdress in the Middle Kingdom for the Sphinx. And he believes that it was carved on far after the Sphinx was actually created.
Oh, absolutely. Oh yeah, no question about that. Yeah. Oh, that's as a matter of fact, Manu Safezadeh has written the best study on the Sphinx. I've got Robert Schoch's book on the Sphinx, but the best one is Under the Sphinx by Manu Safezadeh. He goes to the Coptic records, and it was called Mahit. It was a female lioness. Because Mark Lehner and these guys say, well, there's no record of the Sphinx before. Oh yes, there is. They didn't go to the Coptic records. That's why they didn't find it. Manu Safezadeh goes to the Coptic records. He shows it was called Mahit, and he shows evidences all over the place. And there was evidence so it was a lioness. It was a lioness. Well, they say that head that's on there looks so small compared to the body. When you see what Mahit really looked like, it was a full-size head. It looked right. I'm assuming that some of that poor quality limestone fell off. So now the pharaoh's got to make a practical decision. Since it's a carving, you can't add to it. It's not, a plaster of Paris. It's you carve away rock on a carving. So since some of it fell off, I gotta make a decision as a pharaoh what I'm going to do. And if it's a Middle Kingdom pharaoh like you're talking about, I'll put my face on there. Or he could have said, and so that's why the face is smaller than the body, because the evidence shows it was a lioness. It would have been much too hard to do Anubis, those big long ears like that in terms of a carving. No. I know that people want to say that it was. That's what the Coptic records show. It was Mahit, which is a lioness, and so yeah, that carving of the headdress that came much later. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I've got the research. Well, that guy, I can't remember his name. He's a German Egyptologist. Said the Nemes, Nemes, said the Nemes headdress does not appear anywhere in the first five dynasties.
Yeah, I'll accept that. Yeah, that's good.
The Old Kingdom. I got somebody in the chat I've never seen before saying otherwise. I will look it up, and if this person is lying, I will delete them from the chat. But I will look that up as soon as I get. Yeah, I have zero tolerance in my chat. I'm not gonna have people coming there just saying a bunch of misinformation. We will look it up, and we will determine if the Nemes was in the Old Kingdom. If not, we got a troll here.
Yeah,
that's all. So you give me a challenge, Paul. You inspire me. You inspire me to go through all my files, go through all my stuff, just to put together a bullet point presentation on everything that I have that the Great Pyramid of Giza must be antediluvian. Yeah. So you inspire me to do that. And
and as far as I'm concerned, the things that people talk about, all the purposes of the Great Pyramid. You got Jeffrey Drum talking about the land of Chem. You got people saying it's a factory. You got people material. Yeah, he really. I don't want to. I got him going. I got him on Johanna James. Really blew up his channel. I encouraged him when he got going. And he ghosted me. He's a Mason, and he he just stopped talking to me. It's a long story, but anyways, people say the Great Pyramid is all kind of things. The most important thing that it is a symbolic representation of truth. And that purpose of it doesn't matter to me whether it was built before the flood or after the flood. The most important purpose of the Great Pyramid wasn't a power plant. All the stuff that Chris Dunn needs is not in there. It absolutely not. All the stuff that supposedly would be in there for the tower of what's his name to be there. It's not all these things. It could have been a chemical factory. That's fine. Those are all lower level purposes. It could have been a machine or something. But that's a low level purpose, because if it was a machine, they did a bad job, because it's not a machine now. And if it was supposed to be a power plant, they did a bad job, because it's not a power plant now. But it still is what it really was intended to be, a hugely symbolic reservoir of truth. So the purpose for which they build it, it's still fulfilling that purpose today. It's not a power plant. It's not a chemical factory today. It's not all these other things they say, but it is what it was meant to be. And I don't care whether that was built before the flood or after, because what's there is what's important.
Okay. I get it. I mean, like I said, we can agree to disagree. I think the traditions are pretty focused on the fact that it was specifically built to survive the flood and preserve knowledge for future posterity.
I think it survived. I think it was built with those kind of things. When I used to build, buildings in third world countries, we always put that bond course in up at the top. So if there's earthquakes or something, even in a poorer culture, a poor structure you're building in a third world country, you do that. I'm sure that the engineering of the Great Pyramid involved protection from earthquakes and all kinds of disasters. So I'll go with you there. It's an incredibly built thing.
Awesome.
Jason, the biggest opposition I have as a tour guide is the people who so religiously believe that the Great Pyramid was built by Atlantis or some other, previous high-tech civilization. And usually they insist on Atlantis. And so I'm
so against the Atlantis narrative. You don't even get me started. You're about to trigger me.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I'm just telling you, I prefer Mark Lehner over that narrative, because there's so much evidence. There's so much evidence of an Egyptian build. I mean, there just is. There's powerful evidence, and there's no evidence for a Atlantis build. There isn't. There's just none. Name one. I always ask people when they're challenging me on the internet and stuff. I say, give me one evidence, because here's what they usually say. Well, the Egyptians' tools weren't good. That's not an evidence about Atlantis. That's a negative. That's not evidence. That's a negative. You're saying the Egyptians weren't smart enough. That doesn't mean Atlantis built it. So again, I'm asking you, give me an evidence.
I can't stand the Atlantis default stuff. Gets on my nerves, man.
Yeah, me too.
It's on my nerves. So
people believe
you showed Stonehenge earlier, and you're in such a flow. I didn't want to interrupt. But Sir Norman Lockyer doesn't know why, but in 1901 and 1902, when he was surveying Stonehenge and he looked at the heel stone and the arrangement of Stonehenge, he's like, damn, he saw constants too. He also saw how the heel stones marked all the phases of the moon. And he noticed that the blue stones had come from somewhere like Cornwall or Wales, a good distance. And they were specifically brought here to mark moon stations. But the original Stonehenge, the trilithons and the big 5 trilithons, and then the outer sarsens, he said that's the original. The megalithic part's the original. They brought the blue stones later, only to mark lunar phases and stuff. But the heel stone and the path, and he says he doesn't know why. He didn't theorize why. But there's 2 data points from Sir Norman Lockyer's data that are in my Phoenix research. And one of them is he said that Stonehenge was built in 3 phases, and one of those phases was a renovation. Hold on, I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me. Was 1680 BC. He gave an approximate 1680 BC. They had to renovate it. He figured it was earthquakes or something like that. What a dead bullseye! Because in world chronology, the Ogygian deluge, which was 552 years after the Noahic flood, destroyed a large portion of the world. A bunch of the megalithic architecture that's found distributed around the world was destroyed at this time. Massive worldwide earthquakes. It's called the Ogygian destruction. and it's on the 138-year Phoenix timeline, and it was 1687 BC in the month of May. And every time Phoenix appears, it's in the month of May. Every time we find Phoenix appearing in the historical record, it's in the month of May. So what's crazy is that Sir Norman Lockyer identified the date for the renovation being about 1680. And this was published in engineer David Davidson's material. He's got an illustration of Stonehenge that shows renovated 1680. But Sir Norman Lockyer also never explained why and didn't know why. He just says the orientation of Stonehenge with the heel stone seems to be bringing special attention for some reason to where the sun rises in the month of May. And he didn't know why, but that's what he said. That's what the orientation of Stonehenge was for. So you linking Stonehenge to the Great Pyramid is more powerful for me because of all the 138 sequencing we found inside the interior arrangement. I still haven't found 138 in a single measurement on the exterior of the Great Pyramid, only on the interior. But you found 792 over and over and over on the outside. We're in the number 3168 as well. I have a lot to look at. Because those are the two core numbers alternating throughout all world history. Every time we have badass earthquakes, sun darkenings, regional and worldwide and hemispheric flooding, it's those two numbers that take turns alternating.
Well, and that's why I started the program by questioning you about those, because again, my reading of all the ancient world, there were two major things that the Pillar of Enoch and all these things Stonehenge would do. One would be a repository of knowledge from the ancient world, so all the ancient science, the constant, and all that they knew. And so that's the kind of stuff I brought out. But I find it very hard to find the other purpose, which is warning of things to come. You're about the only guy I know that really has a really solid basis for showing how these things, prophesy, what's coming. And so I still, in all this searching I do, I just showed you, shared with your people some of my stuff, I'm trying to look through all that to not just show all the amazing constants and everything, but what are they warning us about the future? And that's I can
sum that up. You're not going to follow it, but my community has seen the data, so they know what I'm talking about. But I can tell you in a nutshell real quick that in studying ancient calendrical systems, I have identified the Anunanur system, which was a 600-year period system that was very known as the origin of all the Vedic yugas, the Hindu periods of time. It is the Sumerian Nur, which is 216,000 days. Stacked on a 262 Nur would have been 432,000 days, which is the magic number in all these ancient calendrical systems. I have identified 5239 BC, independent of any knowledge of the Great Pyramid, just showing the calendars and what happened on these 600-year periods, which are also recorded in the Old Testament, is very compelling. Even the Great Flood is on the 600-year timeline. But 5239 BC starts some ancient calendar, and it's encoded in the Great Pyramid's measurements. It's crazy. And the Exodus event in the Old Testament, whether it happened or not, is irrelevant. It's a worldwide belief. We've assumed it to be true. But in the Old Testament chronology, it is the year 2448. By many different species of analysis. 2448 is a unique number. It's 1447 BC of our calendar. But the Great Pyramid seems to has a message of exodus from a construct. The Great Pyramid is a construction. So the apothegm of the Great Pyramid, David Davidson measured this just using the casing blocks that are still there and just measuring what the chief cornerstone would have, the original height. The height of the Great Pyramid is 5,448 inches today, but it would be what? It would be 5,814 if a capstone was placed and the casing blocks were placed back. He measured the apothegm to be precisely 612 feet. Well, that's 7,344 inches. That may not mean anything to you, but it's exactly 2448 times 3. It is embodying the concept of Exodus 3 times over. And the pyramid, that's the only exterior part. The interior part, we have over and over and over identified all kinds of major historical events using this measurement, the boss on the granite leaf in the antechamber, just like those guys theorized, Taylor and Menzies and Aldersmith and Adam Rutherford. They were all right. They had the concept down. Their calculations were corrupted because they did not have an accurate history. They did not have an accurate historical framework of chronology in order to prove the concept. But you're saying you wonder what the message would be. I'm telling you now, the message of the Great Pyramid is exodus from the construct. And I have shown this to my community in multiple videos from different vantage points. Over and over and over, this number, 2448.
How critical to what you're saying is the size of the boss? Is it critical to your thinking?
It's not. It was just noticed by Taylor and Menzies and later David H. Aldersmith, but David Davis.
Can I show you something about it?
Yeah, you can show me something. But the actual pyramid inch is identifiable by the measurements inside, the rectilinear measurements inside the pyramid, because they're so perfect. There's no 0.0 to them. They're almost all absolutely perfect. And this is what Petrie noted and didn't understand how the Egyptians could have been. So you said his name is, how did you pronounce his name? I keep saying Petrie.
I say Flinders Petrie.
Okay, Flinders Petrie. There's a lot of things that he recorded, but he also recorded he didn't understand how it was possible, such as the boring. Petrie was also fixated on the boring. Like, how in the hell could they have got the RPMs? We don't have, there weren't drills. In 1890s, there weren't drills that could do that.
There's evidence of how they used foot pedals to do some incredible things that way. But let me show you about the boss here, though. So, the boss is located right there. So that's a picture of it. The key to unlock the secrets of the Great Pyramid, ? Okay. So it's the only round part of the Great Pyramid. That's interesting to me because everything is square, so the part and where this is, it's really, people don't, and Samuel LeBoy has said that the whole Giza Plateau is embedded in the boss. It's like the keystone of the Great Pyramid. Okay, so there it is. So you come up the Grand Gallery, then you go up the Great Step, and most people, when they go into the King's Chamber, they go right underneath it. They have no idea because you have to duck down, and they just stay ducked down. They don't realize you can stand up in there. Okay, so they duck down for that part, and so they don't realize you can stand up right there. That's where the boss is, and then you can stand up over there. That's where they usually stand up. So there's a picture of it there. They go just right underneath it. They don't realize the boss is there. Okay, so there's where the boss is in the antechamber right there. Okay, here's Petrie's measurements I have on here. And it's interesting that it's the right in front of the boss is the phi. And actually, people go into the King's Chamber and they have this profound resonance, these esoteric groups that, they do this.
Yeah.
The resonance is louder at this point than it is at the coffer. This is the phi point. Just to using Petrie's numbers, if you from this Great Step to the back of the King's Chamber, it's at the phi position right there. So there's sound and resonance there, and this is where the limestone of the pyramid exactly at this point changes the granite. Limestone, the common element, it's like the flesh, and granite is like gold. It's like the spirit. So this is the transition point. The keystone is the transition point between all the limestone that the whole pyramid is made from to the granite of the King's Chamber. That's the point. And this is the keystone called the boss. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. And so its depth could be a key to what measures should be used to interpret the monument. Okay, so is it 1 inch, as Adam Rutherford and all these people said? Is it a British inch? So, guess what? I take laser measures at the Great Pyramid, and I know a lot of the guards, and I can get away with a lot of things. Okay, so here's me touching the boss. That's the boss. It's at that spot right there. Okay, so here's a picture you can see there, a side view of the granite leaf that it sits on. Okay, so there's how far it sticks out, all right? So making that closer here, that's the distance we're talking about. How far out does the boss sit from the granite leaf, okay? Question mark. All right. Traditionally, this has always been given as 1 inch, all right? Is it? Is that 1 inch? Okay, so here we go. So I measured with a laser measure from the granite leaf to the limestone wall that's over here. I used a laser measure to get the distance from the granite leaf to the limestone wall. And then guess what? I took a laser measure at the very front of the boss to that same limestone wall. So can I subtract? Do I know what the depth of that boss really is? Okay, it's interesting to me that the distance from the granite leaf to the limestone wall is 1.75 feet because that's the long cubit. So we always say the Great Pyramid is 440 royal cubits, but if you use the long cubit, it's 432. It's 432 because that's the long cubit. That's like a standard of measure. When you turn the 440 into a 432, 432 is a sacred number, and you get it by using the 1.75 cubits. So this is the long cubit, which Robert Grant used to show the side of the Great Pyramid is 432. It's a holy measure being revealed here. Okay, now I got 1.65 feet when I measured that with a laser measure. From this, you can deduce the boss depth. 1.75 minus 1.65 is 1.2 inches. It's a tenth of a foot. It's a tenth of a foot. The royal inch is thus a tenth of a foot, 1.2 inches. So should we use the decimalized foot? Because that's the decimalized foot. Maybe that's the revelation we're supposed to use.
I was about to say, it sounds like they're using a decimal system.
1.2 inches as the inch for the royal cubit. So look at this. So initial indications. Pi over 1.2 is phi squared. So now this new standard, not the 1 inch, unites pi and phi. An incredible thing. All right. And then the royal inch connects phi and pi. That's amazing. And then it's 6/5. 1 over 2 is 6 over 5. It joins 5 and 6, which is the ancient symbol of joining heaven and earth, the macrocosm and the microcosm, God and man. That's what the 6 and the 5 is, the ancient mystery. And so it's connected to that. Okay, so now let's look at the Tetragrammaton, which is at the entrance to the Great Pyramid, okay?
Well, this right here would have been.
So watch, I mean, it's pronounced. Okay, now here's me. I was given permission to be up there. I'm at those original 4 letters, okay? So here I am. That's where I am.
Original 4 letters, but they're Berber, so they were put there way after the pyramid was built.
Okay, so here I am measuring them. Here I am measuring the Tetragrammaton. You can see it's 8 inches. From the V to the theta, whatever that is, it's 8 inches. Okay. So I know what the measurement is. So we're gonna plug this into what the boss shows us. Now let's look at the height. The height, here I am measuring them. 2 inches. You can see there are 2 inches. Okay, so let's jump ahead here now. Okay, so you saw me just measure them. So A and B, those are 2 measurements I took. You got 8 inches and 2 inches. Okay, now let's multiply by the new standard we found at the boss, which is the foot decimalized. So 8 is 0.6666 feet, and B is 0.1666 feet. And so if you multiply those together, you get the unity constant. God is 1, 0.11111 out to eternity. So that's the unity constant. So I'm just saying there's other things you could do with this, but I just point this out, Jason, because let's see, stop sharing. Here we go. Because everybody, and I always believe it was an inch. Like you said, I'm in the lineal descendant of Aldersmith, of Adam Rutherford, and I always said it was 1 inch until I actually measured it.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, that was their theory in the 1800s, and if it's not true, it still doesn't change the actual measurements of each passage.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's just that if it's a standard, because it is in a unique place. I could have showed you that. You can see in your diagram there.
Gave me another standard to look at.
Yeah, so you can see that in your picture there. You've got the granite over here.
And, I wanted to show you. I drew all this based off Petrie's measurements, and you just show that's exactly it. 116 inches is right there. You just show my community the same thing I've had. I drew this 20 years ago. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this is all King's Chamber. I got all the verticals. So this begs the question: if we put aside the symbolic, so
okay,
I personally am 100% convinced that the Great Pyramid has not just all the physics constants as you have shown, and many others, but it also has basic calendrical information using inches as solar units.
Yes.
So
I agree. And you know what?
There's too many coincidences.
What's kept me away from doing what you're doing is the measurements. Really, like I believe in general. I absolutely believe as a principle, an inch for a year. Absolutely. The question comes down to which measurements do I use? And so if I find one, I'll hop on this and run with it and and you've got that sense of confidence, and you've done that. And I absolutely believe in what you're doing. I absolutely believe that it is a calendar.
No, I mean, that's just my take. Just like you believe there's a lot of symbolic meanings in the Great Pyramid, I believe there's calendrical meanings, like with the Exodus, giving us the exact date of spiritual exodus from this construct being at the end of
Jason,
the
that's symbolic. That's symbolic because an inch representing a year, that's a symbol. An inch isn't a year. An inch is an inch. It's a measurement, and a year is the length of time. They're two different things. So that you being using it as a calendar is a symbolic use of it.
I agree.
Because it's not a calendar, it's measurement. So you say that because really that's Einsteinian, the joining of space and time. Jesus said, which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit, which is a physical measurement, to his own stature, which is your lifespan, which is an age. Jesus likened distance and time. And that's what you're doing. You're saying that a distance in the pyramid equals a time. So that's doing the Einsteinian thing of joining time.
So it's a huge monument, though, for it not to also have an engineering function. You don't think it's possible that somehow it could have been something?
Oh, absolutely. I think the Great Pyramid value. It has many, many purposes. To me, the most important, which is symbolic, but absolutely the resonance that's in there. I had a healing service with one of my groups. There was a lady that had cancer, and I wanted to take advantage of the resonance that there. We know today the vibrations, ultrasound, whatever, sound is a healer. I wanted to take advantage of the fact that there's a few places on earth that have what the Great Pyramid has inside that King's Chamber. And so we prayed over people trying to get that energy working to heal. So absolutely, there's all kinds of other purposes. I just think symbolic's the most important one. But yes, there's certainly
symbolism would be the most, absolutely. Because, I mean, they were telling us something else in the ancient times when they said the Great Pyramid was built to preserve the past, the present, and the future. Well, they must be speaking metaphorically then, because you can't fit the past, the present, and the future in the Great Pyramid. So I would have to say weights and measures, calendars, spiritual, allegory, metaphor. It'd have to embody all these concepts.
Yeah. Well, it's like the first chapter of the Bible says that the heavenly bodies are for signs and seasons, days and years. The very first purpose is signs, but it also says days and seasons. That's what the Great Pyramid is: days, seasons, calendars. But the very first purpose is signs, seasons, days, and years. So it has those, But the resonance.
I cannot believe it's been 2 hours, dude. This feel like we've been talking 10 minutes.
No, it's probably, I think my wife's nudging me to get up and spend time with her. We're hunkered down. Everything's closed in Tennessee, or it was the last 2 days. So it's like cabin fever,
It's iced over here too. I haven't gone anywhere in a few days. I'm good. I'm staying put. I'm not going to get out there in that madness. Yeah. Last time it was like this, I had my van. I got a huge winch on the front of my van, and I was ended up pulling people out of ditches because people in Texas are not used to icy roads, and they all go into the ditch. So
yeah. Well, good for you. Yeah.
I'm not doing it this time. I didn't even get a beer. I pulled like 4 people out, didn't even get a beer.
Here's what I got. Okay, when I moved here from Chicago 5 years ago, they never get snow here. And I brought my snow shovels from Chicago. I shoveled all my neighbors' driveways because we had a snow right when I moved here that lasted for a few days, which is very unusual in this part of Tennessee. And so, yeah, I'm the guy with you had the winch and I got the snow shovel. So
yeah, man, hell yeah, well, this is great. You have inspired me, my brother.
All right,
because I'm going to go through all my notes and I'm gonna put it all out there because if I don't have data to show that, I'm going to admit it.
We've corresponded over the years, and I use you as a resource. Or that you could go through the emails. I say, hey, Jason, what about this? And hey, Jason, what about that? So I respect you immensely, and I meant what I said at the beginning. There's nobody like you on planet Earth. You're a unique resource, and I appreciate you, brother. I really do.
Oh, I appreciate that too, but you did inspire me because if I'm holding so rigidly to the belief that the Great Pyramid must be antediluvian and that flood is 23rd century BC, I have to be able to show that. So if I can't show that to my community with sources and show it in a convincing manner to where other people say, yeah, man, you made your case, then that's an issue. So you've inspired me. I have to do that. I have to do that video now.
Okay.
You inspired
me. All right,
me.
man. Well, I thank you for having me, Jason. I really do. And, can I do a little promo for myself here before we get off here?
Absolutely. And when this is over with, I need you to email me all your links so I can put them in the description box.
And that's what they'll be in the description. I just want to say them now. So I already said my website is greatpyramid.org, and that has on there the tours, including not only my tour in April to the Great Pyramid, my tour in France to the mysteries of the Da Vinci Code and stuff in June, but also next year I'm doing a tour for the eclipse. The longest eclipse of the century, over 6 minutes of total darkness, is centered in Luxor, Egypt, in 2027. So I've got
the path of totality is going through Luxor.
Right through Luxor.
Have you used any programs to determine the last time that happened where it went through Egypt in that area?
No, I haven't, but I did check to see if it was in Luxor, and that's because that's the big buzz. It goes through near Luxor, and Luxor is near the totality, not exactly the epicenter, but it's near it. So I was, deciding how I'm going to route my tour. So come to that tour with me. Seeing the eclipse, the rich and famous are always there. Luxor, Egypt already is one of the most crazy places in the world. Spiritual, the Karnak Temple, the Luxor Temple. But now you're going to have an eclipse there. And then I've got, I mentioned YouTube is at the Great Pyramid. That's my handle. And then on Instagram, which is my major channel, it's Sage Silent, at Sage Silent. And I've written books. You can get them on the website and stuff. I haven't even talked about some of my books, but I can
go to one of them.
Yeah, there we go. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, you did a little pitch for me. I appreciate that. Yeah. So again, thanks for having me, Jason. And I will email you all those links and stuff so people can, get at me if they want to.
Yeah, I'll put it in the pinned comment and the description box as soon as you send it to me.
Okay.
All right, bro. I'll talk to you next time. And listen, I'm going to send you an email as soon as that video's done. Give me a couple of weeks. I'm putting that thing together.
Okay, and I'll send you the contact. Thanks, man.
Later.
Okay.
That's a good guy. We've been talking for a long time. As a matter of fact, in my early Facebook days, when my whole social media presence was just Facebook, and I had thousands of people engaging with me, and I didn't have YouTube. I wasn't doing anything. I was just on Facebook. Well, Larry was one of them when he was emailing me at the time, and I used to post our questions. Here's Larry's questions. Here's my answers. I used to do that routinely. And a lot of people read that on Facebook, and it's a good guy. And like I said, you know what? We can agree to disagree. But he's talked to some of the people that I would really like to get in a cage match with. He's talked to people I'd like to really sit across the table for with millions of people watching. And I'd like to ask the hard questions. But yeah, if somebody doesn't have an ability to actually show convincingly with sources, logically, to make sense of a very cherished belief like I have, then that belief needs to be changed. But I believe I have that, so I'm going to do that for you. I need my community to know why I believe this. So I'm going to do a video that shows bullet point presentation why I believe the Great Pyramid of Giza was absolutely built before the flood, and that flood was in the 23rd century BC. Those are the two perimeters of the video, so be expecting it. But you got a video before that that's going to be way better, because I'm ready to do the video now, but we're going to wait a day or two. But that video is called The Year Everything Changed. And no, we're not talking about 1902. We're talking about a year where everything changed, and it's amazing. And you're going to see some new data. It's going to blow your mind, and it's going to tie in all this stuff about a 360-day year, a 365.25-day year, solar calendars, lunar calendars, the creation of a solar zodiac based off old lunar zodiacs. And listen, the Mulappen, all these videos I've been putting out were going in a certain direction. And now they're all out there in one chart. They're all put together. It's going to shock you what you see. And every bit of it is tied to the Mayan long count. It is the year everything changed. That's the next video. Yep, more math, Justin, more math. You're going to love this video. I loved putting it together. I was like, oh, man, my Archaix veterans are going to be having so many aha moments. But yeah. Here, as soon as I get his emails, I will put his links all in the pinned comment and in the description box. If you're coming to the Houston meetup, you're going to be given a drive with 72 courses. Soon we'll have the drive available on the Shopify store, but it's for the Archaix Academy. Covers everything. It's It's massive. 72 courses in Archaix Academy now. And soon we'll also be mailing the people who are already in the academy a whole new drive. You don't have to worry about what we sent you before with 26 courses. Don't even worry about it. We're going to send you the full drive with all the courses all over again, everything, even with the supplemental material, supplemental notes, supplemental books, all that, all in there. So we're just trying to do everything right now that we got things rolling the way we need to. So yeah, that was fun, man. That was fun. Larry and I we've been needing to do this for a long time. Yeah. Concerning I was only one person. I asked twice. I don't care about people disagreeing with me. You're not going to do it with an attitude. You're not going to come in here being condescending in my chat. Yeah, especially when no one knows who you are and you haven't gone through any of the data. You're not going to look down your nose at us. You're not going to sit here and be condescending or flippant or act like you're on a pedestal looking down on us and we are inferior in our knowledge. That shit don't fly in my chat. You're gone instantly. Yeah, I'm not trying to hear it. Yeah, this guy was flipping even when he came back under another account with the same name but the number 2. He was still obnoxious enough to even be flippant about being blocked. So he got blocked again. Yeah, I'm always going to match you with your energy. Everybody who's been in my chat long enough knows. You come with that negative energy, I'm always going to match it with negative energy, and you're going to lose, not me. Not me. I just have zero tolerance to that shit. Great video, great conversation. I have to rewatch it because he threw some numbers out there. I need to go look at those and compare them with rectilinear measurements. You guys know I love to do that. What he showed me, the 3168 and its relevance to 792, is very compelling. Think about it. Think about what Larry just showed us, especially my veterans in here. We have already been convinced that the interior rectilinear measurements are all Phoenix related. But he just showed us that the exterior rectilinear measurements are Nemesis X related. What? Could the Great Pyramid, could it be a three-dimensional stone model of the inner workings of how 3 separate planes all work together to create the experience we call history? Man, it's just something I'm processing. Yeah, we should have had Larry on here a long time ago. So crazy. So crazy. Man. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit this outro. Little something different. Love you guys. We all know it's coming. The restlessness, the chaos, the world a circus of 1,000 shows, each vying for our attention. The unease we feel is because we have been here before. We have experienced this baffling, ridiculous scenario of everything making no sense at all. These are the death throes of an age. This is not the first world we've lost. When a world is on the cusp of dying, those who know they are to drown with it struggle desperately to drag as many souls with them into the coming abyss. It is during these instabilities that the awakened souls realize they have outgrown their contemporaries. The students have ascended their masters. And the truly alive will see that the death of a world only means the birth of another. Who you choose to be during this transition will echo all the way into the next world. The apocalypse has always been about removing the veil between worlds so we can pass on through it.